Hi everyone. I will be going to give you a presentation on Gmail. So this is a very important question which would be asked in most of the system design interviews, and also for those people who are attending the software interview nowadays. Software engineers, for software engineers also, this question might be asked. Nowadays, you can't only go with coding experience to the interview, right? Like you need to understand the whole system design. Coding can be learned easily. As you keep on doing it, it will come. But you need to understand the whole far view of system designing. That's point number one. That's that, that's the reason why you need to look into the video. And the second thing, what I wanted to suggest is, if you are planning to look into this video and if you are thinking that you'll get a complete detail of designing a Gmail, then don't look into this video. This is not the right video for you guys. You can look into some blogs or some go to the Google search and look into the complete detail. The main intention here why I'm creating this video is this is for those people who are trying to attend an interview and want to get a very quick overview. Like within 5-10 minutes, you need to understand the whole Gmail thing. Or if someone asks you the design in Gmail, how you need to think, this will give you a foundation. And goal would be not to have 30 minutes or 40 minutes of video, just to have only more than 10 to 15 minutes of video. That's it. Saying that, I will quickly go to the demo part of it, or the plan what I have done. Whenever someone asks you design a Gmail, you should not directly jump into the designing the Gmail part. First, what I would do is, first let I will ask them some of the questions. What I will do is go to a whiteboard, write down all these things, like what is the functional requirement and what are the non-functional requirement that interviewer is asking. First, let's try to understand the functional requirement. They will say, you need to design a Gmail where I want only authenticated user to log into the my service. Okay, authenticated user. Next, they will tell you you need to give a functionality for creating an email and sending that. Okay. Then they might tell you, I need a user profile service so that for particular user, I will give a different space, and for another particular user, I will give a different memory space. Like for generic user, I'll give only 15 GB of data. For a premium user, I will give 40 GB of data to place, like something like that. They might tell you. Then the fourth point, what they might tell you is, um, I want the email, you need to design an email inbox in such a way that all the spam related email should go to one particular folder, and all the generic email should go to another folder, spam email thing. Okay, write down all these things. You ask them the question. Then what you do is go to the non-functional requirement. Ask them, are you looking for a complete authentication? Are you looking for single factor authentication, or are you looking for multi-factor authentication? Ask them. If they say that, hey, I don't care about multi-factor authentication, I just need authentication, write down that. And are you looking for a high availability system, like you are planning to place this architecture in one data center, the design or the system resources in one data center or in a complete uh, different data center? Ask that question to them. And do you expect the traffic to be heavily, like they might tell you, I the traffic might get heavily loaded up during some period, and some period the traffic might not get loaded up. Okay. And then ask them, are you looking for a monolithic or a microservice kind of architecture? If they say microservice, just make a note down of it. See, it depends from organization to organization. Everyone says everyone like moving to microservice. No, there are some cases where you need to use monolithic architecture also. So this might be the non-functional requirement. After noting this non-functional requirement, what I would do is, don't erase it, keep it separately in the in the white paper, and then start with the front end point of view. Like how do the user create a user, send an email? They can send an email via a laptop, or they can send an email via their mobile box also, right? The mobile phones. So I would take the email, so the laptop, and then the mobile phone. I would draw like this, and then I would bring something called as an API gateway. API gateway will act as a load balancer also. So you might ask me, Rajiv, what is the use of this API gateway? The API gateway will act like a routing table for me. It will act like an authentication. It will act like an rate limiting feature. It will monitor. It will analytic. You can do analytics. You can do security. All those things can be performed in it. So just for an example, it is an efficient way of API development. You can monitor, you can do authentication, you can do analytics on it, you can do security on it. All those things can be performed via the API gateway. Rajiv, is there any cloud provider which provides API gateway? Yes, like let's take an example, Amazon API gateway. So if you see that Amazon provides something called as an Amazon API gateway, where the mobile phones or IoT devices or any connected user dashboard can go to the API gateway, and from the API gateway they go to the other services what AWS provides. So in a similar way, I would design a Gmail in such a way that I will take an API gateway, and the API gateway will do efficient API monitoring, all those things. Now let's go one step further. Since they said that they are okay with the microservice architecture, what I would do is I will come up with three services. One is authentication service. Authentication service basically is the one which takes care of all the authentication. When you enter the username and password, the username and password will come to this service, and this service will check in the database whether he is a valid user or not. If he is a valid user, or then he will be provided a response back saying that he is a valid user. So the API gateway will communicate to the authentication user, and the authentication user will check the database. Inside this database there might be a table like the username, the password, the email, the session IDs. All those things would be placed in this database. The next thing what I might think is I will create one more service called as a mail service. The mail service will also communicate to the API gateway. And the advantage of, like, why am I doing this mail service is, like, this is a service which takes care of sending the email. This is the service which takes care of storing the emails into a different folder. Like, I want spams to go into a spam folder. I want some like the general emails to come to the main inbox. All those things can be performed via the mail services. So I would have one more service. Then what I would do is I will have one more service called as a user services, where user can the profile of the user, like I am creating my use, like where am I, which country do I belong to. All those information will be captured by the user services. Now, let's try to understand how this actually works. Let's take an example that you are trying to send a HTTP request. Uh, Now, what happens here is basically there would be a in the API gateway, there would be a authentication table or routing map. Sorry, it's not authentication table, it can be a routing map, and inside this routing map you will have the IP addresses, services, and which IP address it needs to go. For example, if you are sending create user in the HTTP request, I need to send this request to user service. If you are trying to send an authentication request, I need to send it to auth service. If you are trying to send an email, I need to send it to mail service. So basically, when you send an HTTP request, The HTTP request will come to the API gateway. The API gateway will look into the routing map. Oh, the HTTP request has authentication service. I need to send this request to this guy. Oh, the HTTP request has create user service. I need to send this to user service gateway. And it has a mail service, like it has received the email, or you need to read the email from the inbox. Then it will send the request to the mail service. So this is how I would go with the first step. Once you explain to this to your interviewer, the next question what you might think, or you need to be proactive and you need to tell them there is one drawback with this issue, like everything is loaded onto the API gateway. Now what I would do is there would be something called as a service registry. Instead of loading heavily on the API gateway, there can be a service registry. Whenever you are trying to create a new authentication service, a new services, you need to register your services into the service registry. So when the request comes, what basically happens is the request comes to the API gateway. The API gateway will send the request to the service registry. The service registry will look into it and it will tell, hey, you need to send this request to the authentication service. Once it looks into the service registry, it sends that request to the authentication service, and the authentication service looks into the database and provides the response back to the user. The same is the case when you try to do create service. The same is the case when you try to do mail service. So this, if you think like this, your interviewer will be impressed. Uh, and then let's go one more thing. Like I will concentrate more onto the authentication service here. Now you might ask one more question. Let's try to erase this part very quickly. Uh, uh, Rajiv, you are sending the HTTP request. Don't you think this HTTP request is a stateless thing? Like if I try to do something, if I try to log in, uh, it will authenticate. But once the authenticate happens, again I need to send the user mails. If I want to use the user service or mail service, do I need to again go for an authentication service? And since HTTP is stateless, you won't be able to know that, right? Like, then what we do is we will try to design it in such a way that even that question would be answered. In authentication service, I will we can go for two ways. One is a session ID based service, and other one is the JSON web token based way of doing the authentication. What is the session ID based token is, like assume you have done the authentication registration and then you have done the authentication. You will enter your login and the password. The login and password goes to the authentication service, looks it into the authentication service, and then what it does is it will create one session ID for you, and that session ID would be sent to the user. So next time, whenever a user is trying to log in or trying to do a mail service or user service, in the HTTP request, he needs to pass that session ID. So whenever he pass that session ID, the then no need to go for the authentication services each and every time. But this is like in a very big architecture, right? Like maintaining this session ID would be a complex task. So what we would do is, or what I have read it in some of the website is, you can go for a JSON web token kind of thing. Basically, what you can do here is a user will send his request to the authentication service. The authentication service will create a JWT, and the JWT will be signed with the private key. The symmetry key. This symmetry key will be signed, and the signature would be passed on to it. Whenever a new request comes from the user, the request should also have the signature, the JWT signature. So whenever the request comes to the API gateway will look, oh, it has been already signed by this authentication service and sends that request to the mail service or user service. Now, the next thing what I would do is the interviewer asked, he needs a email to be kept in the spam folder. So what I would do is I would design and I will bring a Kafka into the picture where I'll read the email and I'll put some rules and the producers and consumer issues. Like the producer will consume that service, looks into the database, and then based on some matching, you he will look in based on that some matching, he will put that to a particular folder. So I would have a Kafka there where the producer and consumer issue, and then I'll keep all the spam emails in one particular database. And then also the interviewer asked you, like you need to have a search based mechanism, like you will go to the inbox and you need to search an email. Then what I would do is I will have a mail service, or you can create one more service like the search service, something like that, or I would have the same service, and inside this service I will connect that whatever search you are doing, I will check that into a database. But searching that whole database is a big thing, right? Like usually what some, like the big organization like Facebook, what they do is they use Elasticsearch. So I would use Elasticsearch and search the email. So this is how I would like to design a Gmail for someone. Uh, you tell this much and then see how the interviewer responds to you. If he wants to go in detail, then we will have one more session. I will go in detail about each and everything in the future coming session. But this would give you an idea. If that interviewer is concentrating more on authentication service, you design it in this way. If the interviewer is concentrating on the the spam thing, you need to design have bring Kafka. We will go detail when we take one more design problem and present that video to you guys. But the very important thing here is I have brought an API gateway and I have brought the service registry. This is very important. This might impress the end user. Oh, he is thinking from a very far view. Like, he's looking, he knows the whole complete design, like how the big organization does. Oh, they'll come to know he knows something rather than just telling I will take a system and put all those software there and do that. Like no, no, you can present to the interviewer in this format and they might get impressed. Who knows? Saying that, I will end. Thank you.